You are a ghost in your own life, living for the applause of strangers. It starts with the small, reflexive nods. Someone tells you that a stable job is sensible that a specific path is promising or that your hobby is a nice little distraction and you find yourself smiling not because you agree, but because the silence that follows their approval feels safe. It is a quiet, suffocating kind of safety. You learn early on that being easy to deal with is a survival mechanism. If you become a mirror for what others want to see, you never have to worry about the friction of being yourself. Think about the last time you chose a restaurant with a group of friends. You didn't really care for the place, maybe you weren't even hungry, but when the question hit the table, you felt that familiar, prickly heat at the base of your neck. You defaulted to the path of least resistance. And whatever you guys want is fine, you said. It's a throwaway line, a pebble tossed into a deep well. But repeat that line 1,000 times, in 1,000 different contexts, career choices, relationship boundaries, the way you spend your Tuesday nights, and suddenly, you realize you haven't actually tasted your own life in years. You aren't aimless. That's the lie we tell ourselves to feel better about the stillness. You have dreams, but they are buried under layers of shoulds, and they are tucked away in the back of your mind like a sweater you outgrew but can't bring yourself to throw out. You fear that if you actually listened to what you wanted, the people who love you for your compliance might suddenly find you inconvenient. You fear the disappointment in their eyes more than you fear the hollowness in your own chest. There is a specific, sharp pain in checking your phone after posting something you didn't even like, just because you thought it would make you look successful together, you wait for the notification pings. Each one is a momentary fix, a tiny, synthetic hit of validation that tells you, yes, you are doing it right. But as soon as the screen goes dark, the reflection in the black glass looks back at you, and you realize you don't recognize the person staring. You have become an expert at performing a version of yourself that is palatable to the masses. And then, there are the evenings where you finally have time to yourself. The house is quiet, the notifications have stopped, and you are left with the silence. This is the hardest part. You pick up your phone, scroll through endless feeds, or put on a show you don't even like, just to keep the noise going. If you let it get too quiet, you might have to face the terrifying thought that you've built a life entirely out of borrowed bricks. You might have to admit that you don't know what you would do if you didn't have someone else's script to read from. You keep moving because stopping feels like falling. You tell yourself you're just pragmatic that you're growing up that dreams are for people who can afford the luxury of failure. But the truth is, you are terrified of the space where your own voice should be. You've become so good at anticipating what others need that you've developed a kind of psychic deafness to your own internal signals. You don't know if you're tired because you're actually exhausted, or because you're just bored of playing a character. You don't know if you like your job, or if you just like the way it sounds when you tell people what you do at a dinner party. It's not that you lack ambition, it's that your ambition has been colonized. You've spent so much energy curating a life that looks good in pictures that you haven't built one that feels good in the marrow. You look at your to-do list, and every item is a task to maintain the status quo. There is no room in your calendar for the messy, uncalculated things that actually make your heart beat faster. Sometimes, you catch yourself looking at someone else, someone who seems to just exist without asking for permission, and you feel a twinge of something that tastes like envy but is actually grief. You are grieving the version of yourself that didn't learn to be so agreeable. You are grieving the dreams that died because you didn't think they were reasonable enough to defend. You remain in this gray area because it is predictable. You know how to play the game, and you know how to win, even if the prize is just another day of being someone else. It is a slow, methodical erosion. You chip away at your own edges until you fit perfectly into the mold everyone else poured for you. It's comfortable. It's safe. But at night, when the lights are out, you are the only one left in the room, and the emptiness is loud enough to keep you awake. You don't need more goals, you just need to stop lying to yourself about who is driving the car. And yet, the car keeps moving in the same direction, on the same highway, guided by maps drawn by hands that aren't your own. You are waiting for someone to give you permission to turn the wheel, but you're the only one in the driver's seat. You've just forgotten that you have hands.